And we live in turbulent times at the moment, obviously. But we live in turbulent times in a turbulent economy as well. Right? And that point of opportunity and potential are not equally distributed. And especially in a lot of the less well-served areas of the country, right, everyone is experiencing that point of what Safa experienced and articulated so well, right, of just not knowing. And what we're trying to do is create the right level of understanding, of knowledge, but increasingly of tangible opportunity. There's almost a perfect storm, right, of actually, as all of you on the business side in here know, there's real shortage in some key capabilities. In every business are looking for new kinds of skills. Right? That's real opportunity going forward. We're trying to create tangible opportunities to actually bring young people and opportunity together. Right? And what I am going to say is the wave of technology that we're about to experience, right, is going to not just disrupt, but it's going to change everything that we do and the way we do it over the next 10 years. And I could hand over to no better person now to give a perspective on the change that's happening than Matt Brittin. And the whole symposium has been really designed to look at what is the future shape of work and how can we make that future truly inclusive. And Matt, as I say, runs most of Google outside of the Americas, but actually is deeply passionate and deeply thoughtful about the future of talent, as well as obviously having a purview in an organization like Google. And Matt has been, a tremendous supporter of us, and is a very special person, Matt Brittin.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Nigel. Nigel used to work in advertising, can you tell? What a charming man. Hello, everybody. A big warm welcome to all of you to Google. I'm really delighted to have you here today. Now, at Google, we're very technology and data-driven, so I want to start by collecting data. We always say, in God we trust, everyone else must bring data. So I want to ask you some questions about who you are, if that's okay, but very simple questions. So first of all, can I just ask, I want you to put your hand up and say yes, if you can answer yes to these questions. First question, how many people have got the entire internet in their pocket? Hands up and say yes? Yes. Yes, excellent. How many people can remember a time when you didn't have the entire internet in your pocket? Hands up and say yes? Yes. Yes. How many people can remember a time when you didn't have the internet? Yes. Yes. Okay, so I want to just put the technology revolution in context for those of you who think this has all been here forever. So Google, actually, we celebrated our 25th birthday last week. And Google was founded with this mission to organize all the world's information and make it accessible and useful to everyone. And I wonder how many people know how many people were online in 1998 when Google was founded. What percentage of people on the planet do you reckon were online when we set out with that mission? Anyone? 25? Higher? Lower? Lower. Yeah. It was under 4% of the world. So first thing, it's okay to have a crazy ambition and no idea how to get there, because 4% of the planet was online. Most of the world's information was not digital. I remember when I started at Google, we were digitizing books. We literally had big photocopies and putting the books on the photocopies and digitizing the pages. We started driving cars around, taking photographs and mapping streets. And people saying, what the hell are you doing? It's like, if you've got a mission to organize the world's information, you better have access to that information and make it something that everybody can get hold of. So the first step really was the birth of the web. And I'm quite old, and I was lucky enough to go to university, and I was the first person in my family to go to university, actually. And it only went because I thought I could get better at sport by going to university. And the year I graduated was the year that Tim Bernes-Lee came up with the idea of the World Wide Web. For the last 20 years, I've worked in jobs that depended on an invention that wasn't there when I was going through my student career. And so second thing is like, the world's really uncertain, you've got to learn as you go. And if I think about the technology revolution then, so we had a sort of, the birth of the internet, 1998. 20 years later, the birth of the smartphone, okay, about 2008. So it's a long time to be able to get that into everybody's hands. And then here we are, 2023, 15 years later, and AI is taking off. And I want to talk a bit more about that as well. So the AI revolution, Nigel alluded to this, I think is bigger than the preceding two revolutions. Why? Because it can be made available to everyone. Okay, we've got 70% of the planet online. The rest are coming pretty fast. You've got the entire internet in your pocket. The world's information is there. What AI can do for us is not just put information in your pocket, but put tools for creativity, productivity, and intelligence in your pocket. That changes everything. It means that people who come from less academic backgrounds will have access to information and intelligence. And by the way, I'm sorry, teachers, but we're teaching our children the same things as my grandparents were taught in the same way. And so we know that needs to change. And one of the things I've been proud to do at Google is we launched a program when I took on our role looking after Europe, the Middle East and Africa to help people with digital skills. And we've now trained over 70 million people globally in digital skills, mostly not students, but older people. The average age is over 40. Typically it's 50-50 male-female because people need those skills whatever stage they're at in their career. So second thing, we're all going to need to learn all the way through our lives. The good news is we've got a way to learn in our pockets if we can afford a smartphone. And you can afford most smartphones thanks to Google because Android powers the world's smartphones. It's just as good as those fruit-based devices you aspire to, but it can cost as little as $30 for a phone. And that makes a difference. First time I went to Africa for Google, I went to Soweto, South Africa, and I visited a project we were supporting, which was a tin shed with 30 very young kids in it, and they were all learning languages from tablets and smartphones. It's transformational in an economy like that where education is in short supply. So it's going to really change the lives of millions, billions of people as well. I'm going to talk a bit about AI. Has anybody used a chatbot? Yes? There are some available. We have one called Bard from Google. It's rather less available than some others because we're trying to be quite responsible about how we bring AI to the world, and we might talk about that a little bit later. AI is not just chatbots. You might think it is, but it's not just chatbots. Let me tell you some of the things that we've done with AI actually in this building. So you might have heard of DeepMind, which is our pioneering team working on AI. In this building, they came up with an array of inventions, which are what's behind the revolution you see now. One example, 1 in 8 women in their lives will be affected by breast cancer. And screening, mammography it's called, photographs that basically can help you identify the signs of cancer is one of the best ways to kind of catch it early and stop any kind of harmful consequences. It's got a very high rate of being cured. But it's quite inaccessible to people, and you need a clinician as well as a scanner. Now, our team have built, with the NHS, a capability within AI to identify from scans the signs of cancer just as well as a person can. Why is that helpful? Well, it means that the people who are experts can get to the people who need help, catch them earlier, and improve outcomes for everyone. And think about what that means if you're in a place where it's very, very hard to get access to experts. Transformational. That's AI and something that can change the world for people in that situation. Another example, this is a more complicated one, but it's fundamental. If you think about the pandemic, remember that? Hopefully it's on its way out, but we'll probably see more such things in our lifetime, certainly in the lifetimes of some of the other people, the younger people in the room. Drug discovery and disease research is really complicated. And one of the key things is being able to understand proteins. You learn proteins in your science classes. Now, one protein and its structure, understanding the structure of this tiny thing is really, really important to science. And there are about 150,000 proteins where people had used microscopes and examinations to identify their 3D structure, 150,000 or so. But there are 200 million proteins known to science. So if you're researching a disease, you have to get a whole bunch of proteins kind of mapped out and really understood, and it takes one PhD student 5 years to do that with microscopes and inspections. The team at DeepMind was able to build AI that could identify the 3D structure of proteins. They mapped 200 million proteins, all the proteins known to science, in a year. And they made that available for free to everybody researching drugs and drug discovery. Second big sort of opportunity of AI. So I could go on. We're working on climate, energy saving. We're actually working on nuclear fusion, which would be, if we could make that work, we'd be able to get free energy from the same kind of source that you see in the sun for everybody at very, very low cost. Now, that's some way off, but that's the kind of thing that AI can bring. So it's not just a chatbot. But you can also bring AI to people through a chatbot, and also we bring it to you through everyday tools. If anybody use Google Maps? Maybe use it to find your way here, see if the trains are running. In Google Maps, we recently launched fuel-efficient routing. So if you're driving somewhere, we show you the eco-friendly, fuel-efficient way to get somewhere, as well as maybe the fastest way if it's different. And that's taking gigatons of carbon out of the economy because you've got smarter choices every day. Now, I could go on and on about this, but I guess the point is the world of work is changing. As Nigel said, big, big change driven by technology as well. That gives huge opportunity to everybody because you can have all the world's information and its intelligence in your pocket. It's going to be possible to make breakthroughs the like of which we'd never seen before, but we can only do this together. It's not for Google to do it. It's for governments to come up with the rules of the road because there are some concerns about this technology as well. We need to protect against the concerns that people have and the harms that it could do. We need companies to keep innovating, and not just our companies, but companies like FinTech, it's called, that suffers in now. All kinds of organizations, all kinds of charities and businesses will change how they operate thanks to these kinds of innovations as well. And so there's a big opportunity for all of us. We're going to need to work together on this. I'm excited to do that work with you. But I think part of what we need to do as a company, if we're being successful, is to help the next generation who are going to be the people who harness this technology. I always say if we want technology to work for everyone, that's part of our mission, it needs to be built by everyone, and that's you. So that's why I'm delighted that we're supporting Working Options and have done for some time. And today, actually, we're announcing that we're doubling down on that support with a $500,000 grant, which will help run the operations as well as grow and scale some programs using AI to help you to put those tools to work in the world of work. So thank you for the partnership with Working Options. We look forward to see what we can do there. Thank you very much. Can I come have a chat?
Matt,
thank you, Nigel.
Should we have a seat? Because we are. Matt says he's old. He's not as old as I am. Before we get on to the AI, the future, and I just want to ask a quick question of you, because you said you went to university mainly to go and do a bit of sport.
Yeah.
And obviously you ended up rowing for Great Britain. Now, training to row is hard and takes a lot of resilience. But you also cycled from Land's End to John O'Groats, didn't you?
Well, over several days.
Right, I'd hope so. Yeah. But what was harder, do you think? Just that long-term buckling down to that, or that intensive period of a cycle?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. Do you know the hardest thing actually? I think was finding something I loved. Because once you find something you love, and I loved rowing for some reason, like pushing yourself hard, but when you're with other people and trying to win things and then winning things, that makes it easier to make the sacrifices. The hardest thing for me actually was my parents were both really good at ball sports. My dad, who's 90 now, had a trial for Arsenal and Chelsea.
Right.
And so he was really good at ball sports, and they laughed at me when I tried to catch a ball. And so actually out of my failure at ball sports, I found a sport where they teach you exactly what to do. And that's where I got good. So actually, all of that was born of the sort of disappointment of being rubbish at ball sports.
Yeah, that's a really interesting insight. And that's a really interesting insight for every young person in the room, because you are not going to be good at everything, right? You really aren't, right? But if you end up in a job that you love, right, you're never going to do a day's work in your life. And that is a really important thing.
Yeah, well, I think what Safa said as well, even having had a relatively shorter career so far, you learn from everything you do. And you've got no idea. So I could paint a story to say, well, if you want to run Google in lots of countries, here's how to do it. You know, you go to university, then you do some jobs in business. Some of those jobs are about advertising and technology, and then you land at Google. But actually, it's a random completely random path for me. Yeah. I did sport. That made me think I've got to go to university because the only place I can get better at sport is university. Go to university, and then I want to keep doing my sport. So what do? Go to a job where they're like sports people. It was real estate. People in property love sport. Didn't know that. Used to go training in the morning, go to work, sleep in the toilet when nobody would catch me, go training in the evening, and they liked letting me off to do that. And then how do you go from there to Google? Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was rubbish at property.
Yep.
And so I ran into somebody one day who said they went to business school. Yep. I thought that sounded interesting, and I'm 27 by this point. Yep. So I thought that sounded interesting, but I couldn't afford it. Then I ran into somebody else who said, well, you can get a grant that helps you to go to business school that you can pay back over. So I ended up going to business school, didn't know what I wanted to do, ended up going in consulting, which is basically business school but paid, but you work like a dog.
Yeah.
And at some point, I realised out of consulting, I like working in consumer businesses and in technology.
Yeah.
Then I went into newspapers, which is like the most strategically challenged industry in the world, out of strategy consulting, not very smart. But actually, I learned about advertising and producing products for people, and the technology revolution was taking off there. Yeah. And then Google was looking for somebody who knew business, advertising, technology, and strategy. Yeah. So it looked like a perfect fit, but like it was a completely random set of experiences.
And there's just so much serendipity in this as well, isn't there? And
yeah. But you make your own. I think you make your own opportunities, and that's part of what coming together like this is about. In this room here and in the foyer, there's a whole bunch of people, and the hardest thing to do is to go up to somebody and say, "Hi, what do you do?" But in this environment, that's what we've all got to do, because that's how you make the luck. Like I said, I literally ran into somebody I vaguely knew, and that changed my life. That happens all the time. And the more you put yourself in situations where that can happen, the more it does.
Funny enough, I started off in fashion and textiles, and then got into branding, and then I'd ran into some people who just started a media agency. And they said, well, why don't you come and join us? And I went, I don't know anything about media. And they said, so what? But very interestingly, resonated when you were talking. It was 1992. In 1992, World Wide Web. And so I went into a media industry that got completely disrupted. And because I didn't know anything about the old media industry, bingo, I was a genius, right? Because I was thinking, right, what's the new stuff? I'll get good at that, and it's But if you put yourself out there, isn't it? So AI, I always think of it an AI as being completely horizontal, right? It's going to affect everything. What's your advice for young people? How do you start to engage with AI? You said it's not just chatbots, but obviously they're easily available.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Well, I think the first thing to say is you're probably already playing with this kind of stuff today, and if you're not, then I would encourage you to do it. So people expect you to be glued to your phones, and I know you're not. You're also doing other stuff too, but I think it is important to play with and just be comfortable with technology, because people older than you are not quite as comfortable with technology. I remember years ago when YouTube started to take off. I've been at Google for 17 years, so a very long time. And we had a fantastic YouTuber. In the day, he was one of the most viewed in Britain, called Charlie Is So Cool Like. And he came and stood on stage and he said, I can't understand why people older than me think the internet and the real world are two different places. Like, it's the same place. It was obvious to him, but not obvious to everything else. So I think the first thing is to kind of be in the technology and be confident about the technology. Yeah. Second thing is, if you read the headlines, then there's lots of concern and fear about AI, partly because people don't understand it, and partly because the headlines kind of write themselves. And actually, they do write themselves with AI, of course. But,
well, they can.
So, it's very easy to see how some of the tasks that we do today in jobs will go away because AI can do it as well or better than a human, right? So doing a first draft of something, we have AI in Gmail and Google Docs and so on, so it can help you. So, I didn't do it today, but if write a speech for an audience with working options, including young people, that talks about technology, I'll give you quite a good first draft. And actually, that can save you tons of time, because quite often from the blank sheet of paper to a first draft is a long journey. So that really helps people. So that's the kind of example of technology. If you look at history, what you see is generally technology does disrupt, but it creates as well as it removes. So in the early part of the 20th century, when we started in 1901, the vast majority of people worked in agriculture, right?
Yep.
Trimming hedges and digging fields or whatever. 100 years later, at the end of the 20th century, a tiny proportion of people working in agriculture, but there were jobs like hairdressers and hedge fund managers, right, which were not jobs in 1901. And so I think what we'll see is the world of work will be disrupted. Mostly, the way you do your work in jobs that currently exist will change.
Yep.
In some places, the jobs will go away because some types of job will just be better done by AI. But what we can't see yet is all the jobs that will be created, right? Nobody at Google in the UK would have a job had we not had the technology revolution of the internet.
Yep.
Most of the people who work in the advertising industry wouldn't be working on the stuff they do as a result of that. And there are so many industries that are created by these new things. So I think that's the disruption that we'll see.
Yeah. So very quick, I'd say one quick thing for young people. Obviously, play with technology, play with AI, really become it. But also, right, don't neglect history and don't neglect philosophy. Right? What's happened? What can we learn from what's happened? And always, very big word, ask yourself why. The why question is really important. I want to go to the grant you just announced. Mm-hmm. Obviously for us, it's incredibly exciting. And in terms of being helped to scale the operations and continue to scale the impact we're having. But you mentioned AI initiatives.
Technology is neutral. It's how we use it that makes the difference. And to illustrate this point, I was having lunch a couple of years ago in Italy with a policymaker, and we were eating spaghetti. I know that's a stereotype, but it was true. And she held up a forkful of spaghetti and she said, Matt, this fork is technology, and I can eat this wonderful pasta with it, or I can stab you in the hand. And we don't ban forks, right? But there are consequences for people who go around stabbing people. And I think that's how you need to think about sort of technology and responsibility. We need to make sure that we innovate in technology, but we also need to regulate around the misuse of technology. And I think what's good about AI, there are lots of voices right now saying, let's be really clear, this could be misused in lots of ways.
Yep.
And I think about misinformation, for example. We run search, which is usually the way you figure out whether something is or isn't true, but also YouTube, where we have the risks of lots of information. And now, the difference now, like social media, used to be the case that only people who owned newspapers or publishing magazines and books could reach millions of people. With social media, suddenly it became possible for all of us to be a publisher. With AI, used to be the case that only the movie studios could create incredibly realistic videos. Yep. Now, all of us can do that. So that's what changes. It's not that there's some new thing, it's the fact that it can be done at such scale. So these are the kinds of things that we talk a lot to governments about. We try to bring our expertise along. But the same technology that helps us to do some of the incredible things in science can also be the same technology that helps you create a deep fake video.
Yeah.
The same technology that helps you create a deep fake video could be the technology that allows somebody in this room to become the next Ridley Scott or incredible movie producer. So it's about understanding the technology, how it can be used for good, how it could be used by bad actors.
Funny enough, we've got Stefan here from Synthesia who's going to talk exactly about that on Manish's panel.
Yeah, and actually on sort of how we work with the working options, I meant to say, Nigel, delighted to work together. We will learn as much from you as you do from us, and you'll hear from my colleague Lisa a bit later about what we're learning on digital skills and how we can hopefully bring AI training to you. But I think Safa mentioned how she's inspired by people with more experience. What I've learned is to be inspired by people with less experience who are playful and enjoy the technology and learn from your energy and entrepreneurialism as well. So we learn from each other in this journey.
That's a really good point. And what's your observation of how businesses are approaching this? And do you think that enough businesses are thinking about those? Again, everyone always gets obsessed with short-term impact, and really don't think about longer-term implications of the things which we're talking about. But what do you see from businesses at the moment?
Yeah, well, people might not realise, but you see Google as search and maps and YouTube and Gmail, but we pay for all of that largely through working with businesses to help them grow. We have a great advertising business, so if you're looking for shoes in Japan, you can find somebody who makes shoes in Nottingham and connect with them. So we have huge relationships with many, many small and large businesses across all different sort of industries. And I think all of them can see that AI is going to change the world. None of them know exactly how to harness it because it's so new.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we haven't yet built the tools ourselves. We're just getting some of those things started, like I mentioned in Gmail and Docs and Drives, but also some of the more complicated things that you can do. So I think, like the message to everybody as an individual, it's like get in there and play with it. And so for a business, I'd say to them, use the tools today like Google Docs, etc., that everybody can use, so that then they can have those tools and start to learn from them.
Yeah.
And then secondly, maybe there's some bigger things we can do, like helping you save energy, like helping you make better recommendations for your customers using some of that technology.
Yeah. And I think that, again, the big opportunity is embracing, for businesses to embrace young people coming in who've got those native skills that aren't just learning it.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And like I said, our philosophy at Google, if you're the company whose mission is to organize the world's information for everyone, then you need the technology to be built by everyone. And so one of the things that I've really pushed with my teams at Google is we want to get better at being representative. So in some parts of our organization, we're 50-50 male-female. Yeah. On the engineering side, it tends to be more towards 70-30. That's a major issue. Doesn't mean to say that maybe there are differences between the genders in terms of aptitudes or interest in different things, but we've got a lot of work to do to be much more inclusive. And the same applies to companies large and small. Mostly companies are serving consumers. Consumers look like everybody out and about in the country. The companies don't always look that way, and that's something we need to change. I'm really pleased to say that we're making a lot of progress in that, but there's a lot more to do still.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Unbelievably, we're on time.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. But again, from everyone at Working Options, but everyone that we impact, thank you, Matt, and thank you to Google.
Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.